Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is your host, Kushal Mehra. All right, today's podcast is called Geopolitics around the automotive industry. And to talk about it, I have with me Kushan Mitra. Kushan is back on the podcast. Kushan, thank you and welcome.
Thank you for having me, Kushal. And you just told me about your health, so I hope you get well soon. And thank you for continuing to do the podcast.
Man, thanks. It's okay. अभी तो ऐसा है कि this is a new mode of podcasting
Okay.
with some fever. So I don't know, but it's okay. So in case if I fall off the screen accidentally, I'm just kidding. Nothing's gonna happen. But yeah, so just to give everybody a brief background. So the first time we did the podcast, so Kushan and I had this discussion on the phone call itself when we had decided to start doing these podcasts, that we will do a series of them. So the first time we looked at a more base level history of the automotive industry in India, we barely scratched the surface. So I remember clearly Kushan had told me that okay, next time we'll talk about geopolitics. Then we're going to stick to the geopolitics bit, but one article that was written recently by Kushan on the print on the 29th of October, it was called Toyota Solid State Batteries Can Solve EV Problems Big Time, but I Have My Doubts. Now, why this caught my eye, I'll share my personal experience. So I drove along with my wife the Tesla Model 3 when I was in America this time. We rented a Model 3 and we did a long trip, not a local trip. So we rented the Model 3 in Michigan, Detroit. We went all the way to New Jersey. From New Jersey, we drove to Washington, D.C. And from Washington, D.C., we drove all the way back to Detroit City again to drop off the vehicle. Now, I have had the whole hog of charging, how to charge, what is the ideal percentage, everything, how to use the Tesla navigation for finding superchargers. So, I have a lot of personal experiences about that, but we will do all of that before. But I'll hand it over now to Kushan, and you lay the foundation of how do you want to look at the geopolitics bit.
But the geopolitics is a very simple issue right now. Okay, has been written about by global magazines as well. Simply put, right now we don't control in India control our supply of hydrocarbon energy. Right, we're all importing oil from Russia, even if it's Russia, even if it's cheaper, we're still importing it, right? And it allows states like Qatar some leverage over us, as we're seeing with the current controversy, because all our gas is coming from there. Now, one reason to shift towards electric vehicles always was to reduce dependence on these uh, petro states. But one country in particular has developed their EV ecosystem, actually the battery manufacturing ecosystem completely, and that is China. China controls everything, and companies like BYD in particular, BYD has the mines. They mine the lithium to producing the final car. So they do everything. It's a fully integrated processor of lithium in that sense. And China has invested heavily in the charging ecosystem. And right now, even in their own companies like BYD and CATL and MG, SAIC. So the fear, of course, we have is we go from being dependent on some nations that the petrostates, the Gulf nations, to being dependent on China for supplies of EV parts, cars, batteries, everything. And very honestly, China isn't a friend, right? I mean, it's fair to say that.
Absolutely. Friend is a very nice way to put it. They are dost, dushman desh. They are foes, not friends.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you really want to be dependent on China for your transport infrastructure if you want to move towards EV? But I mean, I live in Delhi and I look out of my window right now and you can see the murk in front of you. And I mean, AQI is horrible. I'm running two air purifiers in my drawing room because I've got a toddler at home, not a preschooler now, at home. I mean, vehicular pollution plays a role in this pollution. We'll be very honest. I mean, I might write about the auto industry. It's so called my industry, but vehicular pollution is real. It's not just, like stubble burning or parali burning that's happening right now, or the construction.
Mhm.
Why also air quality sucks because of it's but vehicular. I mean, the number of vehicles on our roads is going up. It's going to continue to go up for the next 20 years as our economy grows. As we have in this country celebrated private car ownership, obviously, so, and people want it. It's I mean, I'm sure you've done upwardly mobile. Younger Indians who are making money will want a car, and
Absolutely.
I mean, so there is that need also. So you do need to slightly decarbonize your transport infrastructure, your private vehicles as well, whether they are two-wheelers or four-wheelers or buses. And will that lead you to be more dependent on China? So that's the geopolitics of EV. It's very easy to say that Japan and South Korea or Taiwan can pick up the slack, but they're not really. I mean, they just don't have the capacity China does. And the only good thing is, I think that both Europe and the US have recognized this as well. So they are highly incentivizing the US, in particular with Joe Biden's green program, really incentivizing local manufacturing of everything, refining, mining in the US as well. We found lithium out in Jammu a few months
Mhm.
ago, if you
Yeah.
recall.
Yeah.
But it's not just finding the lithium. I'm sure we'll find more lithium in India, but it's also the processing, the mining. And my fear is, there are always rent seekers, and like they shut down the Sterlite plant in Tamil Nadu, and we've been from being a net copper exporter to a net copper importer. Um, for years, uh, the bauxite in Niyamgiri has been, challenged for various wild reasons. Environmental causes become a huge thing in India, but you couldn't do anything in China for stopping their mining or anything like that. Um, and I know sometimes I call some environmentalists in the European Union, in particular, nothing more than white supremacists because they want to keep India down. It's all India that has to match. They're not going to give up their quality of life for Indians. As I'm saying, you cannot. How can I begrudge somebody buying a car? Because they've done well in life. They got their first job, whether it's IT company or they're going to buy a car. So it's a very conflicted issue, both sides, right? I mean, people will want to buy cars. Cars add to pollution. So how do you control that pollution? And we want to go down the EV route, but how do we do it? So the lithium we found, we have to mine it, refine it, process it, do all of that in India, set up the ecosystem over here. As I said, hopefully other countries also realize that, and India can play a role in creating alternative to China in the EV ecosystem at least. But there are some things China does very, very well. I mean, what China has not just built is the manufacturing, but companies like BYD and CATL, which are the two largest battery makers in the world, have developed a lot of their own intellectual property now. You can see Chinese companies actually. I don't know how many of you use any products by DJI, but DJI is a world-class company now. They're developing proper hardware that Europe and America have not. So it's not just enough to set up manufacturing in India. We also have to set up IP. But at the same time, we have to understand it is a globalized economy. Some things will be done better by other countries. But yeah, I mean, I'm very fearful that we end up becoming too dependent on China. And would we want that? Is the
Now,
question.
I have a counter here. Now, at the end of the day, we are in a peculiar sort of a situation as a nation because we don't have large reserves of oil for ourselves. So, nor do we have the required raw material that is needed for electric batteries. So, in a situation like this, for a nation like ours, we really can't have a say beyond a point in any issue, right? Whether it's X or Y. And why can't we look at these things as we may have less leverage on issue A, but we can counter it and create a counter leverage by having issue B. So China might have a number on us, let's say on EVs, but are there certain things that we can also have on them? Now, right now, I know the balance of trade between India and China is incomparable, so there we have a huge problem. But in the case of the Arab nations, now that there we do have a serious leverage over them because their economies run on us because of our diaspora. So it's not so easy for them to mess with us. In fact, dealing with the Arab world is far easier than dealing with China, if you ask me personally.
There are long histories between India and Arabia. It's not just, the oil might have only been for the last, 3/4 of a century, but our civilizational ties go back millennia
Mhm.
before Islam, pre-Islamization of the Arab Peninsula. I mean, there are links to, you go to Egypt, and it's obviously, yeah, we can deal with Arabia because we know them. China and India, you're absolutely correct, very different. But it's very simple to say that we can do something on trade. We can't even deal. I mean, our imports from China are still climbing because everything, even if things are assembled in India, even if the TVs you are seeing or the phones you are seeing are saying made in India or assembled in India, the China is doing the bulk of the value addition, and that's going to change as more manufacturing happens. Now, in the auto industry, I do think India has leverage for a very different reason. This year, passenger vehicle sales will cross 4 million. We are by far and away the third largest car market in the world. Even if you take, I think in the next couple of years, even if you take Western Europe as a giant market of its own, or even all of the EU as a giant market of its own, we'll be above that. Sure, the value of the vehicles we sell here isn't that great, but even that's climbing now. So we do have that leverage. That's the leverage we have on Tesla as well. Why is Tesla, if you've heard Elon in India, why did Elon, his guys have been talking to the government over here. They will set up in India. It's very sure. It's almost certain that, um, I know guys who are helping Tesla in their potential operations in India. Let's not get ahead of ourselves and say that Tesla will set up a plant in India. But the
Mhm.
market is very attractive. It won't be something like a Model 3 as you drove the Model 3. The Model 3 is not a small car. It's a small car by American standards,
Yeah,
but
very small.
it's very small. Compared to something like the Model X or the Model Y, which are huge, right?
Oh,
But
what a car,
but
man.
but the Model 3 in India is a large sedan, something like the Skoda Octavia or something like that, right? It's not a 3 Series, a BMW 3 Series, C class. That's that level of car. But for India, they'll come up with something like the everybody's calling it something like Model 2, something smaller. Uh, and if they can get the pricing done, I'm sure, you're looking at a 25 lakhish product. Even though the Model 3 in China, and in China, Tesla has been cutting prices. The Model 3 in China costs under 30 lakhs, if I'm correct. The entry level, I think, is
Yeah, they
under
cut
3.
a lot of prices in America also recently. I don't know if you
Yeah,
read
yeah.
about that.
Weirdly enough, the EV market is declining in America
उसके
because
reasons हैं.
there are lots of reasons. You drove down from Michigan down the Northeast Corridor,
Yes,
and the West, and the Western Seaboard have a lot of chargers. But I'm sure the moment you go west of Chicago, um, and in the US, the entire Midwest, in the center of that country, there's almost nothing.
nothing.
You can possibly do some of the larger highways. So there is a charging infrastructure issue. I've been talking about it in India also. And you use Tesla superchargers. Now, if I talk about electric vehicles in India, I've been driving
गए.
the Hyundai Ioniq 5 now for about 5 months. That's the long-term car that Hyundai has given me. I live with the electric in this country. It's amazing. Uh, the Hyundai electrics don't use Chinese batteries; they use South Korean batteries, obviously. But it's been a learning experience. there are chargers. I mean, I charge at home, and home charging makes EVs extremely affordable. They're extremely cheap to run, and but it's a pain, getting chargers. I can't consider going from Delhi to Kanpur, where my in-laws are, in an electric car. It's 500 kilometers. The car just about has the range, but not enough for me to trust it all the way.
रिस्क नहीं ले सकते.
And there are no really fast chargers. You're not going to wait for 2 hours on a highway to charge your car because, I mean, I used to call it when I was younger, Susu and Sutta stop with a coffee. Something like that. I mean, those are 15-minute stops here.
Yeah, ये बहुत बहुत लंबा सुसु हो जाएगा.
Yeah, but 2 hours is too long. So anyway, back to the issue at hand. We are the world's third largest car market. We're not small.
Yeah.
The value of the car is growing, and which is why Tesla wants to come to India, which is why the Chinese companies are still desperate to come to India. It's not about, I mean, MG, which is a part of Shanghai Automotive Industrial Corporation. MG was going to grow in India until the incidents at the Galwan Valley occurred. After that, Great Wall Motors application was denied. BYD's application to grow in India has been denied, and MG is finding it difficult to raise funds. And you're right. I mean, we do. If we do allow China into India, it will drive down the cost of EVs. No doubt about that. You see what China did in the smartphone market. I mean, look at the cost of. I mean, okay, Reliance is doing some of their own devices now, but look at what you're getting for about 6 to 8 grand nowadays on a smartphone. That's all thanks to China. You can't doubt that. I mean, if you give China a few years in EVs and with the IP they're developing, and I'm sure you could get the 15 lakh rupee proper good range EV. But as you said, the terms you use to describe China, I mean, do you want to be dependent on China? It's a risk you do. And at the same time, if the battery and the controllers and the motors are all imported from China, you are also hollowing out manufacturing in India. Keep in mind, the automotive industry employs a lot of people, even though, I mean, I just went to the Maruti plant in Gurgaon a few days ago. And it's very, very automated, extremely automated. What's a good thing is some of the automation is now made in India. They have automated guided vehicles running on the factory floor. Those are made by Indian companies. Awesome.
Wow, that's really nice.
Yeah, but that's really cool. The robots are still mainly Japanese in Japanese plants and Korean plants. But it still employs a lot. I mean, everybody, I think about it. So when you hollow it out, when when the cars become, the battery pack is the most valuable part of the car, the motor is the most valuable. Making a body shell it's the heavy machinery part, but it's not really
the least complex part.
It's the least of the value add. In an EV, the battery is almost half the value of the vehicle. At least in a car. In a two-wheeler, less so because the batteries are smaller. But in a car, it's much of the value of the vehicle. And if half the value we are doing, none of that value addition over here. Because if you look at a car like, say, and a Maruti Swift also. A Maruti Swift is 95 to 98% value addition is Indian. Maybe some controllers, some chipsets come from abroad, but much of the value addition is at home. So,
Magar, I have a question about this. So I understand all of this, that we should like, if we did not have some sort of a protectionist attitude about our automotive industry, then we would not even have had our own car companies in the first place, right? So why can't we have that kind of a mindset when it comes to even the electric vehicle industry, where the market demand is so high that eventually all these companies will spend money on research and development and build their own batteries in that sense. Now, I do understand that the raw material is always going to be coming from some part of the world, like it or not, but it's still doable because not only am I looking at it from a car industry perspective, Kushan, Now a lot of two wheelers are also electric, right? मैं अभी आया अभी क्या होता है कि मैं इतना टीवी देखता नहीं हूँ, मगर आजकल अभी वर्ल्ड कप चालू है तो आई एम वाचिंग, तो एड्स आ रही हैं। तो एक ऐड आ रही है, वो हीरो की एक ऐड आ रही है जिसमें आई सॉ दैट इलेक्ट्रिक
Movable
का
batteries for VIDA. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
movable batteries and stuff like that. Now, if a company like Hero, so I'm assuming Hero must be importing all these batteries, right?
Yeah, everybody is. Everybody's important. I actually very recently, and I'm sure you must, you must get this guy Tarun Mehta, who's the founder of Aether Energy, onto your show. I
Okay.
just went to Aether Energy's factory in Hosur, Tamil
Okay.
Nadu, just on the Tamil Nadu Karnataka border, and met Tarun as well at the Aether offices in Bangalore. They are doing a lot of work. They are developing a lot of IP. This is a company that was born in IIT Madras.
Hmm.
They've developed a lot of the IP in-house. They became 10 years old. They're $1 billion company. In fact, the largest investor is Hero, and that's a Hero has their own brand. And so there are a lot of the funding and the capital they've raised is also Indian as a result. Um,
Interesting.
they're doing some very interesting work. I mean, they say, okay, our cells, but they do admit, and some of the cells come in. They are making the battery packs in India. At least they're getting the just the raw cells from abroad. There are some other companies doing that. Lots of innovation being driven in India. I mean, I've met up with several of these companies in the last 6 months alone. There was a company called Exponent Energy that's developing their own charging ecosystem that will allow cargo three-wheeler to charge in
Hmm.
15 minutes, fully charge. And they're doing that by building their the cooling system into the charger. So you have cooled water that's going through the charging port. So they have their own proprietary charging port. So there's a lot going on. There's a company called Log9 Materials also in Bangalore. So Bangalore has become this EV hub, particularly in the IP creation front. And it's great that we are creating that IP, at least on the two-wheeler, three-wheeler front.
Hmm.
And it's awesome. We are the world's largest two-wheeler market. The shift is happening. Yes, the cost, there is a cost. And I don't want to get into the politics of the FAME subsidy, which was pretty messed up, the way the government and manufacturers have done it. But there is a lot of great IP happening in India, a lot of great companies. I've written about them, great stuff they're doing, great IP. And of course, everybody knows of what Bhavish is doing with Ola. Um, so, yes, but the gold standard for vehicles is always the passenger car. The passenger car is it. I mean, we all talk about passenger cars, that's what we want. Over there, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that Tata and Mahindra are doing as well. Let's make, I was privy. I'd gone to South Africa earlier this year with Mahindra, and they showcased. We weren't allowed to take pictures of it, but we saw the production ready version of their first built from the ground up EV, and it looks really sexy. It looks like something you'd want to buy, and that should be out in 2026. And there's some stuff that Tata is doing. They come yesterday itself, and the results announcement, they announced that they are developing their EV platform jointly with Jaguar Land Rover, and they'll also be coming up with their ground up ecosystem. Maruti, last year I went to Maruti's R&D facility in Rohtak. They've got this 800 acres in Rohtak. They built one of the country's largest test track and spent 4,000 crores in building that. So everybody's investing in India. I mean, this is a market that's going to grow, but also at the same time, a lot of the ecosystem has to be helped by the government. I think a lot of government policies aren't. We have to encourage EV making. Yes, we'll be. You're right. You're right. We'll import the raw lithium. We'll import some cells also, maybe. But eventually, we are a large enough market where we should produce everything inside India as much as possible. I mean, some raw materials we'll need to import, just like we do for cars today. For the internal combustion engine vehicle, as I said, for a bog standard Maruti hatchback or a Tata hatchback or a Hyundai hatchback, they are 95% made in India. All the value is Indian.
Now, let us look into the vehicular market itself. So,
Mhm.
Don't you think, considering the Indian market and considering the current state of affairs? So now let me narrate my journey. I
Mhm.
would not recommend anybody to use an electric vehicle for long trips. That's my first honest answer.
Fair enough.
Okay, that's and this is me driving in a proper first world infrastructure country.
Mhm.
America has, I mean, people can look at random videos of California, San Francisco, and assume that the country has gone to the dogs. I can assure you, it has not. It has amazing infrastructure, and I struggled. So even if, see, I was in a place where there were enough superchargers. I'm talking about superchargers. Why now there is the regular charging system and there is a supercharging system. The difference is the supercharger takes very little time to charge for those who are not aware, and the regular charger कुछ नहीं, पूरा दिन उधर बैठ के पत्ते खेलना, फिर गांव में जाके चार पांच लोगों के साथ गॉसिप करना, फिर दो चार लोगों के साथ फाइट मार के आ जाना, तब तक गाड़ी चार्ज हो चुकी होगी. ये डिफरेंस है सुपर चार्जर और नॉर्मल इलेक्ट्रिक चार्जर में. सो we had to, obviously this was, so we learned a lot also. So when we went to New Jersey, we would make a lot of mistakes. Biggest mistake, we listened to Tesla's navigation guidance, because you know what Tesla does, उसको जरा सा भी सेंस आती है ना, वो बोलता है ये चार्जर है इधर चले जा, ये चार्जर है इधर चले जा. और हम गधे के जैसे जाते गए, जाते गए, जाते गए. हमारे एक आधा चार्जिंग का ट्रिप एक्स्ट्रा लगा, तो उसका मतलब हो गया कि वी वेस्टेड at least half an hour more. Every acha, the thing I learned is you should not charge up to 100%. That was luckily written in the manual itself. It's like, you know, your cell phone charging, right? The last 10% of a cell phone takes more time. Similar rules apply to the electric vehicle charging. सो वो भी सब सीख लिया. हम लोग 10% तक जाने देते थे, फिर 5 to 8% के बीच में चार्ज शुरू करते थे और 80% में बंद करते थे. एवरेज चार्जिंग कुशान यूज टू कॉस्ट बिटवीन $12 to $14. $12 to $14 में चार्ज हो रहा था. एवरी टाइम चार्ज करो इतना ही लगता है. यही रेंज होती थी. कुछ स्टेशन में कम लगता था, कुछ स्टेशन में, मगर वो $1-1.5 का फर्क था. इसके लिए इतना याद नहीं आ रहा है, मगर जितना याद है, आई मीन माय वाइफ टोल्ड मी $12 to $14 लग रहा था, बिकॉज आई हैड फॉरगॉटन. सो आई वाज लाइक, आई एम डूइंग द पॉडकास्ट टुडे, तेरे को याद है? तो मैंने उसको पूछा. शी वाज लाइक $12 to $14 होता था. बट if I would have done the same trip using petrol, Kushan, I would have saved 1.5 hours on the whole trip. And this is in America, where charging in this zone was amply available. So, all conditions remaining same, electric charging is not worth it on a long term, until and unless you have that Model S, which has 450 miles का range. वो Model S की 450 miles है. Then, yes, then it is comparable to a petrol driven car. मगर
So
वो
you
Model S कौन लेगा यार?
no no you see in India if you want the Ionic 5 I have gives a real world range of about 450, which is great in the city. But you were saying in the US, right? So my wife's cousin stays in Seattle. And I'd gone to meet her. That's where I first experienced a Model 3 back in Jan 2020. And he had the Tesla. His wife had a BMW X3, which he said, "Oh, the X3 is the one we take up when we go to Vancouver." So the Model 3 is the one that goes into from the off home to office and all of that. But you take the petrol car when you have to go on a long trip. And that's if you mentioned about the story I did recently, which is looking at that and how Toyota is talking about solid state batteries. That's a massive change in battery technology that could change a lot of that. Uh, Toyota has been championing it. However, the Chinese companies like BYD and CATL are developing a lot of it as well. And yes, if you can say that I can do that 10 to 80% charge in 15 minutes and have great range, that's it, right? I mean, you're absolutely correct. I mean, the thing is, in a in a petrol car today, okay, if I have something like, you're right, it's just a 10-minute, you know, fill it, fill it, shut it, forget it, right? I mean, you're done. You've got 600, 700 kilometers of range after that. You don't need to worry about charging
Yeah.
it. And even if you run out of fuel, even if the low fuel indicator goes on your instrument cluster, 10 minutes lagenge. You got lucky when you went to the US that the chargers were available and free, but at many of the charging stations, say on the Yamuna Expressway or on other expressways, like the Delhi Bombay, the chargers weren't even functional when I went on it with the electric. I'll go again and try it out again, but there's only one or two charging points, right? If there's a lot of electric vehicles, two charging points won't cut it, and they're not fast. You had superchargers. Superchargers work fast. The other chargers, you're absolutely 2 घंटे 3 घंटे लगेंगे गपशप मार के आओ या छुट्टी करके आओ.
Yeah, it's
That
a
is
it's a pain.
that is the huge problem for me. I mean, people say, "Oh, you must plan your trip." I agree, you must plan your trip. Yes, I've learned. I want to look at all the chargers. I'm going to take. I took the Ionic to Agra. I've taken it to Jaipur. But Jaipur was a bit of almost a miss. Just about had enough range. Had to do a quick half an hour dash of power, but with the Agra was easy enough. There are enough chargers inside a city. Wherever there's a Taj Hotel in India, I now know there's a Tata Power charger. There are networks like Static in North India that are very good. India now, GeoBP is doing a great job in the west and south with setting up chargers. But these aren't fast. These are 60 kilowatt chargers maximum.
Phew.
So either you're going to keep on doing this, 15, 20-minute charge the car up by, get 20% of charge and, keep on doing 20% all the time. But we have a long way to go. I don't think
Yeah,
the infrastructure is great.
I am convinced that electric vehicles are only meant for city driving. They are just
I
not
agree.
designed for long term driving. Long range driving के लिए नहीं I am never going to rent another electric vehicle in my life when I'm going to plan a long trip. I am not going to do it. मैंने अपने कान पकड़ लिए वो एक 5-7 day ट्रिप करके मैं पागल हो गया.
I get it. And I get it. I mean, I know there are big EV fans out there who many of them get very agitated at some of my columns and say, no, you should be driving like this. You should be driving. I said, boss, I'm not going to adapt my driving style every single time. I will adapt a bit. I do adapt a bit, but I'm not, if I like some speed once in a while, I like some speed. And electric cars are very good fun to drive, very honestly, because of the instant power and the instant torque. I don't know if you tried with the model. Did you try ludicrous mode? Did you have a car with ludicrous mode?
Yeah, I think we did.
Do you try it?
No, man.
You should. It's awesome. You should. No, honestly, when I've gone with quite a few. In fact, weirdly enough, Seattle is now the city I have most friends at now. Everybody's moved out of the valley. And so many of them have Teslas. All the Desi boys in Seattle have Teslas.
Yeah, अरे
So
हर अभी टेस्ला का तो ऐसा है ना, सच्ची सच्ची बता रहा हूँ, हर तीसरी टेस्ला में तेरे को देसी दिखता है उधर.
exactly. I mean, and Tesla's got great software, so the Desis love it. So in Seattle, every one of my friends, school friends, college friends, everybody had Tesla. I mean, one in the house. I mean, the guys had a Tesla, and some of them also had a big fat Ford F-150 on the side. But still, but yeah, long trips is a thing. But cities are awesome, right? I mean, at the end of the day, bulk of the driving any of us do, whether it's you, me, anybody, is in the city. We are commuting. Even if you're commuting from Noida to Gurgaon or from Mumbai to Thane or Mumbai to Nasik for that matter, they're urban drives. Electric works best. And the operational cost of an EV is unbelievable. Something like the new Tata Nexon.EV I drove recently in Pune, that will give you, almost 10 kilometers for one unit. I mean, if you drive it very carefully, I mean, even if you drive it hard, it'll give you 6 kilometers per unit. And keep in mind, a unit costs $8, $9, $10. And your running costs for an EV are, I mean, but the capital cost is so much more. Um, for the Tata Nexon EV, which is India's best-selling electric vehicle, the top-end petrol automatic costs on the road about 17 lakhs. For the top-end EV will be over 21 lakhs. So on the road in Delhi. So, I mean, 4 lakhs, you get a bit more features for sure, but that's a lot of money. 4 lakhs is a lot of money. And
और कितना पैसा बचता है yearly?
so, Nexon EV, if you get an average of about 12 to 14 kilometers per liter, depends on how much you drive again, right? The same math you do. So, Nexon EV will cost about 6 to 7 rupees a kilometer to run versus 1 rupee a kilometer for the EV. So, you save $6 per kilometer. Yeah, if you're doing, I mean, if you run it for 20,000 kilometers a year, you'll make your money back. You'll make your money back in 3 years.
Okay,
But I
that is a
mean,
lot of money saved. That is a lot of money saved there,
but if
Kushal.
you're running 20,000 kilometers a year, many people don't even run 10,000 kilometers a year.
Yeah, those many people
You're
are
not,
people.
yeah. So
Me.
you see, if you use an electric car, keep in mind one reason many people don't buy electrics is they say that the battery is only going to last 8 years. That is incorrect. A battery, like on your phone, has a number of charge cycles it can last. The batteries they use, so your phone battery starts going down after 1500, 2000, 3000. If you charge your EV properly, the occasional fast charge, and charge it up to 80% if you're fast charging it, 100% if you're doing it at home, you can actually make a car EV battery degrade slowly, last 3000 charge cycles. Each charge cycle giving, say, on a Nexon EV, 300 kilometers. That's
Mhm.
even 250. Even 250, if we go at as low as 250. You're talking about 7.5 lakh kilometers. That's how much a battery can last if you treat it well. Nobody's going to, the problem is you're not going to drive it that much. And buying, I mean, yes, because I have a young child at home, I say, okay, I can make a little difference. I'll buy an EV. I don't want them reading. Let me make a difference. Most buyers don't buy vehicles or anything for altruistic reasons, right? You buy it, cost is a
Obviously.
matter. Different in a country like India. In America, you can buy something for altruistic reasons. Definitely in the Scandinavian countries, you buy vehicles for altruistic reasons. But
Mm-hmm.
those are richer countries. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yes, we have a lot of low-hanging fruit when it comes to EVs, and of course, the government have to think about what to do with China. We can mandate, like at airports. Why aren't those airport buses electric? Why aren't all the airport tractors electric? Why can't we make school buses electric? As the buses get replaced, goes electric over there. Um, uh, you've seen how now so many delivery boys, if you're ordering food delivery or even Amazon or Flipkart, they are coming on electric vehicles because they use it, right? So they're coming on electric three-wheeler, electric four-wheeler, even two-wheeler. They're using it so much, the economics just make a lot of cost benefit. But as I said, uh, to take full advantage of the cost benefit of an electric vehicle, you have to look at buying it for look at using it as much as possible. So it really doesn't make sense if you're not, and most people don't drive that much. They drive 1,000 kilometers a month in a big city. In a small town, in small towns, like how I mean, my mom-in-law lives in Kanpur. She has a 6-year-old Hyundai i10, Grand i10. I don't think he's done 10,000 kilometers. You don't really use it, right? You don't really use
Yeah.
car, but you want to have a car, by the way. You want to have a car.
So, why don't you think then in such a scenario, something like a hybrid vehicle would be better
I'm
off for
all
Indian
for it.
conditions?
I'm all for hybrids. I believe hybrids. Firstly, I've argued several times that the taxation, excuse me, that the tax on a car should be based on tailpipe emissions, right? So you start with zero tailpipe emissions that an electric car has, and you go all the way up to something like a BMW M5 or a Mercedes AMG car, which is going through using petrol as if it's going to finish tomorrow. But so therefore, a hybrid will come somewhere in the middle, right? I mean, a hybrid will have, look at the success of the Toyota Innova High Cross. Everybody wants it. It's got almost a 1 year long waiting list for the car, because my friends who bought it, they are saying we are getting, on a petrol car, mind you, they're getting 20 kilometers a liter on a Innova, which is a huge car. So you should have your car taxes, whether it's GST or road tax, should be equivalent to that. So hybrids will be promoted over there. However, there are hybrids and there are hybrids. I think the government, rightly or wrongly, thinks that hybrids are yesterday's technology, because it's we want to go all the way to electric because we want to skip a step. We are India. We went straight from the landline to 2G mobile phones. We can skip. We didn't even have landlines properly. We went straight to mobile. That sort of thinking. I mean, yes, but cost is an issue, right? Cost is
Yeah.
an issue, and we have to figure out how to incentivize buyers to buy electric, buy lower emission cars, even hybrids. I believe hybrids, in the US, I was looking at some US sales figures right now. The cars that are doing best in the US are what you call plug-in hybrid electric vehicles,
Yeah.
where you have a much smaller battery pack than a full electric, maybe only about 5 kilowatts or 10 kilowatts, but
Mm.
that is enough electric power where, say, in center of a city, say you go to South Bombay, right? I mean, you go, once you cross the sea link, you move to electric mode only. It has got enough range for that little bit of South Bombay, and then um, you can go back home. The motor charges it as well as charge it from the wall. So yeah, and
So
it's a lot cheaper than full electric.
what I have understood is it stays on electric mode up to a certain speed till your car is driving at a certain speed. So if you're in traffic, which is a constant state in India, at least in Mumbai, you're in a constant state of traffic in India, and every time you brake, so every time you press the brake, right? Some of these
Is reaching.
vehicles they keep charging. It regenerates
Yeah,
it.
even a good EV does that, right? It's regenerative braking,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
charging the battery. No, they not just the speed thing, right? I had the Honda City Hybrid for about 2 months last year, and I really liked it. I got 22 kilometers per liter, which is fantastic, right? I mean,
This is city
without,
driving.
mainly city. The Honda City are mainly urban. Yes, in Delhi, you've got the Delhi Gurgaon Expressway, and you're going to Greater Noida. Those are high speed roads. But the hybrid is a great piece of technology. Yes, it's a bit complicated. Yes, the controllers and the fact that you have two powers, it is complicated. There's a lot of complex engineering in a hybrid, but the Japanese have managed to drive costs down on hybrids to the point that the cost differential of a hybrid to a regular, say on a Honda City, I think it's about 2.5 lakhs, which you'll make back. You'll only save about 2 or 3 rupees a kilometer tops, but you'll make that back. If you, even in an EV, if you consider you're going to own the car for 5 years, 6 years, and petrol prices might go up in those 5 years or 6 years, right? You'll still probably make your money back.
Fair enough. But one aspect that nobody, like one decent solution when I was driving in America and getting myself tortured, the first thing that came to my mind was, I was like, ये battery swap क्यों नहीं होती?
Yes.
Just say, for example, I go into a charger station. Instead of charging what I have, they have a ready-made thing. They take this out, put that in. It should be obviously the size of the battery of the vehicle was too big. Somebody told me to be done in this way. So then I was like, work on that, right? Rather than creating so many superchargers?
Bit more complicated because today, all cars today, even SUVs, even vehicles like the Mahindra's XUV 700 or even the Land Rover Defender are called monocoque. Monocoque construction means the body is the body shell is the strength structure. It's not a frame design where you can easily unload the battery. So then a car right now in Tesla is talking about something called giga casting. So everything becomes cast in one piece.
I know.
The battery is pretty much integrated into the car. You
Yeah, that's
can
the
remove
problem.
it, but it's not easy. Whereas battery swapping works very well in a two-wheeler because a two-wheeler you're fitting
Exactly.
in the battery pretty much like you're fitting in batteries in your remote control. Battery swapping also works on a bus because a bus is built on a frame, so you
Mhm.
can remove the batteries. So battery swapping was talked about in buses. The only issue, and this was told to me by large electric bus manufacturers management, they said the problem is we don't want to do swappable batteries in India because we just don't trust the ability of state transport corporations to maintain those batteries. They'll maintain
I
it
don't know.
badly. One day they'll all catch
वो
fire and we'll be blamed.
या और नहीं तो सडनली पता चलेगा कि गवर्नमेंट के स्टॉक यार्ड से देयर आर बैटरीज गोइंग आउट बीइंग रिप्लेस्ड बाय सम cheaper knockoff of the Chinese batteries. So the Chinese cheaper knockoff of the Chinese battery.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
government is capable of doing something as rotten as that in India.
No, it's not government, right? It's about how you manage the system. Right now, actually, what's happened is because, and this is not a very well-known fact that after the power utilities in India, the most
Mhm.
indebted state-owned corporations are the
Public
state
transport.
transport corporations. They're
Yeah.
extremely indebted.
Yeah.
Um,
हमारा मुंबई में BEST.
BST, so therefore, some of the arguments against people made against free bus travel were very bizarre because India was the loss they'll make for free bus travel is nothing compared to the losses they already make. Um,
Mm.
and they actually, so a lot of the EVs are not run by them. They are run like in Mumbai. If you go down to say you see the small electric buses near the gateway, those are actually run by Tata Motors themselves. Those are not guys who are employed. So a lot of the state transport corporations, the big problem they have is, like Air India, like it has their pension requirements, all of those. So right now, these buses, whether it's in Delhi or whether it's in Mumbai or many other cities, they're run on a per kilometer basis by these private companies, and the state government has to pay them that money, and that's the way it runs, and uh, that's what's happening. And I said EVs, buses is easy if we improve our public transport infrastructure, and if we okay, take a call, fine. China makes batteries the best now. For now, let us increase our dependence on China while um, giving the correct subsidies. And I think the government is doing the right thing with the performance linked incentives for promoting manufacturing. Big companies like Maruti, Aisha Motors, Tata Motors, they've gone in for the PLI. Hopefully, they'll be able to make the proper vehicles over there. I'm not saying the government is not doing the right thing. It's just that we have to be. We also have to look when I talk about geopolitics again. We are friendly to Japan. We are friendly with South Korea. Encourage their companies. I mean, Hyundai is coming here. LG Chem is here. The Japanese companies want to come here. They realize India is the market. Encourage them to set up manufacturing over here. And
Mhm.
with these companies, there's always been tech transfer. You see, like Samsung making their latest phones in India now. LG is making their phones in India. Everybody's doing all this in India. So, um, but we have to also look at some near-term solutions, which is because air quality is just so pathetic. And if you're not addressing the stubble burning, which you're not in Delhi at least, for whatever reasons, and the fact that a lot of the construction that is happening is for public infrastructure, Vehicular pollution is the one thing we can control, and we have to control that. And vehicular pollution is actually the through the year problem. It's not just during in these months due to the other conditions rising, it becomes worse. But
Mhm.
we have to control it, and we'll have to take a conscious call on that yes, we have to depend on China, whether we like it or not, for a short term at least.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that at the end of the day, if we don't have the resources or the wherewithal in the short run, I agree with you. We'll have to depend on China, but it has to be on our terms as much as possible, and we have to slowly build technologies. I agree with you. We should look at South Korea, Taiwan, in whatever way they can help us, and many other nations in and around Japan. I don't know if the Americans can be relied upon on anything. It's just my point of view
Not with the
personally.
government in America, no. But no, Taiwan, talking about Taiwan, there's a Taiwanese company called Gogoro, which is the world leader in battery swapping. So a lot of the swapping stations, I don't know if you've seen them, there's some being set up in Delhi. Hero is one of the partners because you said saw the Hero ad for the swappable battery. So over there, you go there, put in your battery, you buy a battery subscription package. So there will all be these innovations. I'm sure I do not doubt our ability in India to drive services innovation. We've done that with the mobile phone and smartphones and subscription packages. So you can do that. Maybe we'll see what we do.
Yeah.
Um, so there is that. But you're correct. We'll have to bite the pill and say, okay, you know what? China is way ahead in the EV game, in the EV battery game, and setting up the infra and even technology. They're going ahead of the Germans. The Germans are scared after what they saw at the Chinese auto show. So yeah, if it means getting in the maybe on our terms, maybe as there's talk going that Sajjan Jindal's JSW will buy a stake in MG Motors India.
Okay.
So yeah, that's been the news. It's been going around for a while. My friend Pankaj at Times of India wrote about that. And I don't know if it's going to happen. It's been rumored for a long, long time. But maybe let's see. Maybe we'll partner with Chinese companies, just like the Chinese forced foreign companies when they entered China to partner. But keep in mind, China wanted Tesla to go to China. Tesla, unlike the German companies, unlike Toyota, unlike Honda, Tesla entered China with 100% subsidy because China wanted to learn from Elon Musk,
Yeah.
and they allowed Tesla to do that. So we should be very strategic. I mean, China was strategic in the way they look at companies. If I mean, there's talk right now that the government will look at giving some. So right now, if you import a car, you almost pay double, right? For a brand new car, it's almost 114% more. So that's why
Hmm.
imported cars cost so much more in India. Then that's when you compare price of a car in America and car in the same car in India. You're like, what the hell?
Hmm.
But if we give a tax benefit to EV, say Tesla comes into India and say, okay, you bring in a cheap car, as you establish your manufacturing facility, it might take 2 years or 3 years or whatever it is. You can establish a sales network. We'll give you a benefit for a few years to while you set your stuff up, and you give that to everybody, not just Tesla. You give that to Toyota, you give that to Hyundai, you give that to Volkswagen. So and let them establish their bases, and once we get the volume, because manufacturing only makes sense in volume. It doesn't make sense to set up a. Why do you think none of the Mercedes, which is possibly going to sell 20,000 plus cars this year in India, they don't manufacture cars, they assemble cars in India, but they don't do much value add in India simply because the volumes aren't there.
Yeah.
So to build the volumes, you can't insist that Elon set up a factory here, but Elon won't set up a factory to sell 10,000 cars
Yeah.
to so to give him some incentives, and I think that's happening now. I think the governments realize that the government can't car companies will say, we won't come to India if you have these onerous conditions.
No, I agree. If I was a car company, I would be saying the same thing. But one weird market that I came across in my reading up random things was the absurd world of the Pakistani car market. उधर सेकेंड हैंड महंगी होती रहती है हर साल. क्या है वो?
Yeah,
अजीब जगह है वो. क्या है वो देश? इतना अजीब देश है.
because वहां पे गाड़ी बनती नहीं है ना. So they import virtually everything. In fact, for a long time, the Maruti 800 was sold there for longer than was sold here because they still had but they are getting kits. Uh, Even the Japanese and the Koreans told Pakistan, if you allow, they won't. By the way, Pakistan doesn't allow. Logically, a kit should go from India because we are also a right-hand drive market.
Yeah.
But no, they don't want kits from India, which makes it a huge challenge for everybody because they don't make right-hand cars in many markets. So all the cars, the kits have to come from Japan or South Korea, and second, obviously the Pakistani rupee is falling, so the second-hand demand is there. Some of these guys, by the way, now because of the balance of payments crisis Pakistan had to stop their imports of their kits. So only way you could get a new car was to buy a second-hand car.
It's
But
insane.
yeah,
Yeah.
well,
So chalo,
it's,
I'll ask you a couple of questions from the viewers now.
Anji.
Somebody has asked, seeing the horrible AQI levels of Delhi NCR, which switch to CNG, what will you recommend for the capital, which depends mainly on the metro and local transport for commuting?
Yeah, in the capital, I honestly, I
Kuchhi ho.
drive an electric inside the city. And if something could be done to help the bridge capital for electric vehicle, and I would suggest people in Delhi get as many electrics as possible. Um,
But honestly,
I
would
mean, I
that
just
even do a blip on the pollution?
I think a lot of the pollution this time, what's going unsaid, a lot of the pollution in Mumbai also is a lot of the construction. And this is,
Yeah.
the RRTS is being built, phase 4 of the metro is being built. यार मुझे
Yeah.
गुस्सा इसलिए आता है ना क्योंकि this is stuff that should have happened 20 years ago.
भाई
20 years ago.
भाई झगड़ा
But
करो,
no one-
सेब आरे वालों से झगड़ा करो.
हाँ लैम्बोर्गिनी खरीदते हैं उसके बाद
बोलो.
बोलो ना. I mean, the Urus is a very nice car, though. Huh? I mean, she bought whatever car she bought, a very nice car. I've driven those Lambos around the track, very nice. I don't know where the hell you're going to drive them in Mumbai, but anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hesitate. I was just talking to a very close friend of mine yesterday. She's the mother of a 8-year-old and a 16-year-old, and she's saying, we have to do something. She's saying it's only. And she had a point. It's going to be the mothers that can drive some change. But I just told her one thing. Can you imagine Delhi without the metro? We didn't have the metro until 2000, until 20 years ago. Okay. There was no metro. I finished college in 2000. There was no metro. And today, everybody who goes to North Campus of Delhi University uses the metro. I mean, Delhi without the metro would have been unlivable by now. I mean, I've already got friends in Mumbai who are praising the new metro to high heaven. They're saying, I don't care if the auto walas are crying, but thank God. I mean, I love the metro. I use the metro quite often, actually. My son loves the metro. He loves going for a ride on the metro. Every Sunday we go for a ride. Public transport has to be encouraged everywhere as much as possible, at least in an urban environment. But for that to really encourage the metro, I think DMRC, the Delhi government, can learn a bit more, make better parking facilities, build more multi-level parking. They are now. So people can park and go, use the metro. There are lots of cars. And I'm sure if you did this smartly, more people would do that. And across the board. And I hope more Indian cities. I mean, Mumbai, definitely the metro is improving. The East-West line in Kolkata, what's happening in Chennai, Bangalore. Once the new metro to Whitefield in Bangalore gets ready and all the way to, it'll make huge changes. AQI is pretty bad in not just Delhi right now. It's also bad in Mumbai. It's also bad across. I mean, the pictures that have been posted on X, They show it's like, somebody's blown a cigarette straight onto a map of North India. Yeah. Literally, it's just
Mm.
that. It's a gray. I've got two air purifiers on at home. So anyway.
Yeah, it's horrible. So one more question. Why
Anji.
not develop nuclear power to make coal liquefaction to produce petrol viable in a viable manner? We have massive coal deposits equivalent to 300 billion barrels of oil, and we have good uranium thorium deposits. Why can't we do something that apartheid South Africa did?
You should really invite a gentleman called Dr. Rahul Tongia to your show. He will explain this a hell of a lot better than me. He is an energy expert. Dr. Tongia is somebody I respect a lot. We haven't been able to do anything with thorium until now. Thorium was a super fuel. As far as I know, I am not an expert on this. A lot of the stuff, yes, it's amazing. We can do a lot of, if we could do that at scale, yes. But the one thing we have to remember in India is scale. Doing things at India scale is using. I used to. I once went to a conference where I had a bunch of Scandinavian guys say, we should do this, you should do that, you should do this. I said, boss, there are more people who live in Vasankunj than live in all of Norway. I mean, okay, that's a bit extreme. Not very by far, but definitely more people who live in Vasankunj than live in all of Oslo or anything like
Mm.
that. Why do you think companies like MasterCard and Visa are petrified of UPI? Because it works at scale. Um, Thorium is a massive thing. Thorium can be worked. There is one theory that was told to me by the folks at Toyota. So there's a lot of wind energy that's being generated in India right now, whether it's on the deserts of Rajasthan or northern Karnataka, not near very high energy consuming areas. So you can use that electricity to electrolyze water into hydrogen and then convert that hydrogen into ammonia, which is NH3, and ammonia is liquid. So you use pipelines to transport the ammonia. Ammonia goes back. You denitrogenize the ammonia. It's possible. Lots of solutions. They sound very great on paper. They sound very great when I'm talking about it right now. But do they work on scale? Do they work on the scale required to fuel a country the size of India? And India's, again, I think the Mercator projection does India a massive disfavor because we are a huge country in terms of size also. We are massive. You don't realize that on, as I said, a Mercator projection map. Um, so to do something in the scale of India is not just the volume, but also the distances involved. America is bigger for sure, but America has much of America's population is down the east and the west and Texas and Chicago and up there. But that's it. I mean, that's where you'll find 95% of America's population. So
Mm.
India is, yeah, I mean, we have population centers all over the place. Yeah, you can argue 70% of us are on the Gangetic Plain, but still, scale, how to implement, huge problems here.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, I mean, in my observation of a lot of these suggestions that come, is that I think people don't realize how inefficient they are in reality and how romantic they sound on paper.
Oh,
And
yeah, for sure.
most of the times I hear these so-called suggestions, I just tell myself, listen, I'll buy it when I see it. Like, honestly, I don't say no to people who have an imagination. It's always good to have a good imagination, but yeah, beyond a point, I don't see the viability in most of these things. And like, I'll give you an example. I ran a factory for more than 20 years. We would always have discussions around how do we save water, how do we save fuel, how do we make our fuel efficiency even better. And we would think of technologies X or Y. And whenever, technology recommendation would come, I would be the first one to adopt them. But in 20 years, barely two or three times they came. with it. And out of the three that I tried, only one worked. The other two were just, I mean, the person claiming that they would work, I said, listen, I'm not going to pay you anything. You have a free hand. You can do the changes. If it works, you can monitor. Your man can stay there. My man can stay there. If it works, I'll pay you. If it not, you can remove your parts and go. And twice they had to remove their parts and go. Once it worked, I stuck with that. So in 20 years, there was this one claim that basically could happen. Yeah, eventually, I think the only solution for India is सब लोग हवा में ऐसे एक दूसरे के ऊपर कूदिया मारो.
No, but another thing in India which you don't realize, one thing I just read the other day, a friend of mine who looks at the consumer durable sector was telling me the fastest growing consumer durable in India is air conditioners now. Air conditioners growing faster. Everything else, you can go, I'm sure if you go to Dharavi, you'll see air conditioners in Dharavi now.
Mhm.
You cannot begrudge people buying air conditioners. I mean,
Obviously.
Greta Thunberg will be very angry people are buying air conditioners in India, but
She can
it's
keep
50-50
crying.
down there, boss. I don't care if people should buy air conditioners. I'm
Mm.
happy to give loans to my staff at home to buy air conditioners. It's inhumane for people to operate without ACs nowadays. So, but it's a vicious cycle. ACs generate hot air. ACs use power from. I mean, no matter even the 5-star ACs, right? They still you're buying more ACs, you're using more power. So yeah, it's a slightly vicious cycle also, right?
Yeah, man. क्या करें अभी? It is what it is. But Kushan, uh, before we wrap it up, anything else you would like to add?
No, I think coming back to the point, there are lots of issues that the government has to look at. The government's been decent to the automotive industry in India. It's been protective. It's why the automotive industry today, both automotive and auto components, contribute significantly to the national GDP. It is the single largest manufacturing sector in India. Huge amounts of employment in many of the auto belts, whether that's Pune, Chakan, the NCR, Chennai, and now increasingly in Gujarat. In fact, just did a story about how sad it is that Bengal didn't get the chance thanks to political protests there. We have to look at, because the automotive industry does provide employment. It does provide employment to millions. So we have to be
Mhm.
very, very. We have to think this through. Government has to think this through. Sudden changes. I know the government wants to make changes. Ministers in government have threatened to bulldoze things, industry, because clean air is a priority, but employment also is. Creating GDP, creating national value also is. There are no easy answers. I don't want to pretend that they are easy answers. There are no easy solutions. So yeah, people have to think this through, and people like us are there to criticize and argue and even give suggestions as and when needed.
Yep, man. I wish there were good answers, but I before we wrap it up, I was so excited when I drove the EV as a car. Honestly, I've never driven a better car than that in my life.
Elon makes good
Literally.
cars, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I have not driven a better car than that in my life, at least. I was like,
Uh,
whoa, what a car. But again, only for city driving. If you are someone who likes to go for, long drives, long distance driving, electric vehicles are not meant for you. And one very, very big point that nobody wants to talk about is eventually batteries go sour and
they
batteries
will.
also have to be dumped. And what are we going to do with the battery dumping is also something that we need to keep it in the back of our heads.
Well, batteries can be recycled, the batteries that they use, but yeah, but a battery, as I said, relies 3,000 charge cycles, so it's got life.
Mm.
Uh, Batteries and battery recycling are there, but it's the same issue with smartphones. Most smartphones are pretty well recycled nowadays, so we'll get there. I'm not worried about the recycling, but yes, if India has to go down the EV path, we have to think of recycling right now before EVs
Yes.
uh,
We
really
need to have
expand.
those resources in order.
We need to have the industries in order. We need to promote recycling. We need to do all of that right now. We need to have the incentives. Right now, for example, there are different lithium, but that's a different debate. But yeah, recycling will be a challenge for some battery chemistries as well going forward. Yeah, no doubt.
Yep. Kushan, thanks very much for coming. As
Thank you
always,
for
it
having
was
me.
a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. And we'll do this again in a few months. So see you soon.
Yeah. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up. So, in the description of the podcast, if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening to the audio only version, you will have Kushan's X handle and his link for print where he writes a lot of his articles. You can go and check them out. And as you all know, that this podcast is a member-driven podcast. So if you can support the Cārvāka podcast, please do by becoming a member on YouTube or on Patreon or on Fanmo. You can also buy the Cārvāka podcast merchandise on kushalmehra.com or on Kadak Merch too. You can also support the podcast by just sending your donations through UPI to Kushal Mehra at ICICI. If you can't do any of this, just subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment in the comment section. And if you are an audio only person, just leave a rating on the audio platforms that you listen to. I will see you guys next time. Until then, namaste. Take care. Bye bye.